All right, welcome back. This is episode 4 of the Our Two Cents podcast. We are coming at you from a different country.
Yeah,
We
we made it.
traveled a few days ago. We traveled from Thailand out of Bangkok and we landed in Brisbane, and now we are in Gold Coast here in Australia.
Yeah.
So what are your initial thoughts of Australia? Now we've been here
Oh,
only a few days, but what's your thoughts?
I'm obsessed with it and I never want to leave. If it wasn't so far away from like our actual house and family, I could see myself living here, but I'm only been here for like 72 hours. So I might be jumping the gun, but literally we went to the beach and I was like, this might be the best place on planet Earth. Like I love it so much. But I think there was also so many things that I had missed from back home that I get the vibe of here in Australia, that it has that homey comforting feeling. So I'm probably just like looking through my, rose colored lenses right now. But yeah, I'm really liking it so far. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
we were coming from a place that was a little bit challenging in some areas. I mean, obviously we had a
Yeah.
ton of fun, but you're eating like Thai food. It's not like you can go to the grocery store and buy stuff we would eat back home in Canada. So you're just bombarded with Thai food for a month straight, and it can be
It was
taxing.
tough. Yeah. It was.
But since we've been here, I thought it's awesome. I mean, I kind of get the vibe of like a mix between North America and, well, Mexico is part of North America, but I guess I'll say Canada and Mexico, because you have, on the one hand, things are very similar culturally to back home. So you have people, obviously they speak English, very friendly people. You
Yeah.
have grocery stores that are stocked with similar things that you can go and buy.
My
Uh,
goodness.
People driving around in vehicles, travel's very similar. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things similar to Canada. And then you have mixed in with Mexico. So, the beach and the ocean are nearly perfect, in my opinion. Like the water is so clear and warm,
Yeah.
and it was 30, whatever, 2 or 3 degrees when we were at the beach yesterday, like
Yeah.
the other day. And just walking around, like the vegetation is somewhere that reminds me of Mexico. You have like the thick bladed grass, and you have palm trees, and you have parrot birds flying around. And so I've
Yeah.
kind of thought it feels a little bit like a mix, like the best things of Mexico and the best things of Canada. So it's pretty high on the list at the moment. I mean, it's been
I, yeah.
the few days we've been here have been pretty awesome, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So
I definitely agree. And I also feel too like there's just I mean, probably because we're on vacation and kind of like at a resort-ish style Airbnb as well. There's just this vibe of the lifestyle that I really like. Like it does still seem like a little bit laid back. It seems like people are quite active, like they like to take care of themselves. There's always people like running and jogging and just all these things as well. And so it just seems like a fun lifestyle that I feel like I would enjoy being a part of.
yeah, it's interesting because I didn't know that, like Southern Australia near Sydney, Melbourne, kind of south area that way. I don't know what the province is called, but we met a few people from that area already here, and they actually come here to holiday. It's maybe like, I think,
Mhm.
about 1,000 kilometers, so maybe an
Like an
hour or
hour flight.
hour 15 flight. So
Yeah.
something like an 8, 9, 10 hour drive. And they had told us that, it gets quite chilly down there. So they get to like sometimes towards 0 degrees in the wintertime. So right now in February, they come up here for, some of them come up here to holiday because it's 30 something degrees every day. And down there, it might be 15 degrees. So I didn't know that. And then as you go north of here, it becomes much more tropical and more humid, and you kind of have the more tropical vibes of animals and trees and all that stuff. So it seems like there's a lot to explore on this coast. We're on the East Coast. So yeah, I don't know that we'll get to too much of it while we're here this time, but in the future, it's something I would definitely love to come and do with our kids, is just explore
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, me too. Within 24 hours, though, I looked at Aaron and I was like, I think we're coming back here every year. Like, I'm already ready to book my flight back next winter. Like, Canadian winter. I'm like, sign me up. Australia, sure, sounds good. Like, and I think we'd been at the beach for like an hour at this point, and I'm like, I'm ready to come back next year already. Like, when can I book my flight? It's so nice.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
this
well,
is your
that's like
vibe.
what's that?
I said, I think this is your vibe.
This is absolutely
Yeah.
my vibe. Oh yeah. He's like, happy wife, happy life, right? Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna get into today's podcast episode, and I'm excited for this one. We're gonna kind of reminisce a little bit and walk all of you guys through us, the two of us, the evolution of us, like how we started, how we've gotten here, what sort of things have we come across in our lives over the last 13 years of being together. And 14? No.
Yeah. 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 It's 2025.
I did
It's
this
basic
the other.
math.
Okay.
25 minus 11 is
2011.
14.
Oh, you know, they say time flies when you're having fun, right?
So 14 years.
14 years of being together. And I'll kind of I'm going to get Aaron to take it away and we'll start from there and just see where we end up. Who knows?
Sure. So we initially had known each other from high school. We kind of had similar friend groups. And so that was back in, I graduated in 2009. So that would have been just before that probably. But then we'd actually known each other. And then I graduated and went off to university. And I was still in the same city where we were at Chilliwack, which is where we met in Chilliwack. And I was in a university for a year and a half. So it was now 2011. And we had been seeing each other for a while. And one of the funny stories actually that I think is pretty funny is we had been seeing each other for a little while, and she was over at my house. I was living at my parents at the time on the farm, and we were watching a movie or something, and then she was going to go home, and we were at the front, and I'd never had a girlfriend at this point. I'd never really interested in having a girlfriend at this point. And so we're at the front door, she's kind of leaving, and I asked her if she wanted to start dating, be my girlfriend. And her response was, sure. Like, she had a big smile on her face and said, sure. And without almost zero hesitation, I looked at her because I was very confused about this. And I was like, well, it's kind of a yes or no answer.
Word for word. That's what comes out of it.
Yeah. Word for word. I said, well, it's kind of a yes or no answer. And so still with a big smile on her face, she says, yes. And then she ended up leaving, going home. And I remember walking to my room to go to bed, and I was really confused by the whole thing. And I was kind of well, that was weird, and just kind of went to bed.
One of the funniest things about this now, if you look back on it, I'm so indecisive.
Yeah.
And Aaron is so matter of fact. And so that little situation could not have been more true to who we still kind of are to this day.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess I shouldn't be indecisive when it comes to who I feel like dating, but in that moment.
Do you remember it the same way? That's how I remember it.
I don't remember going home feeling confused. But maybe that's because I had to make a decision in that moment. And I said yes. So I was like, okay, cool. I guess I have a boyfriend now.
Yeah, I remember being slightly confused, and then I just was like, well, I'm going to bed, and I'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't know, but
and it's so funny. And also the fact that you picked me as your first girlfriend. What a good choice. What a home run.
So that was when
You're batting 1 for 1 right now.
21. Yeah, so I've had one girlfriend my whole life, and
yeah, we love that for you.
So I only had to ask that question once if somebody would want to be my girlfriend. I don't even know if that's how you ask the question, or
sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you asked the question that way or what, but
anyway, who knows? I have no idea. So anyway, that embarked
so that's how it kicked off.
That embarked us on our journey of life together 14 years ago in January. Now that I've been corrected that it was 14 years and not 13 because simple math. But yeah, so we started dating and I was 17 at the time. I was still in high school. I was in grade 12, so my final year of high school. And there was a lot of things I feel like that we went through in those really early years that were not obviously deal breakers, but things that I think just learning a lot about each other and ways that we kind of did things. And we're going to do a podcast episode on this too, but because I think it's valuable for people to hear. But Aaron and I truly could not be the most polar opposites when it comes to our personalities. Like I'm super outgoing and like if there was a party on a weekend, like I was going to it. And if like anything social, like I was going to be there. And Aaron could like, would rather do anything else. And so obviously when you're like 17, 18, 19, and like I even remember like my 19th birthday and I was so pumped to like go to the bar and stuff. And Aaron was like, I've been doing this for 3 years. Like I have no interest in doing any of this with your friends. I remember being so offended, but it has taken us a lot of time. He's laughing because he's like, yeah, no, I didn't want to go. He's laughing because I shouldn't say us. It's taken me a lot of time to like see the world through his perspective. And I think like early on for the first few years, like that was definitely one of our biggest challenges is that like instead of viewing him not coming to these things as a reflection upon me, it was like viewing them as like he's actually just choosing what's like most inherent and comfortable to him. Would that be like a fair representation of that?
Yeah. Yes. I think like how that also in that time where you were still in high school and I had gone through grade 12 and I kind of obviously understand.
He did come to prom with me though, so we'll give him kudos for that.
I understand like going through your last year of high school and it's really exciting and there's all kinds of stuff going on socially with people and but I also wasn't like I'm 2.5 years or something older than you. So it's like I had already gone through high school and I was in university and I'm like I also don't really want to go to like high school parties and so it was kind of like an
Yeah.
odd predicament for me as well. But that was only for like 4-ish months or whatever. And I
But
do remember
honestly,
going to
like
some of
thinking
them.
about that, I'm like, that's kind of good. Like, why would I want to date somebody in university that wants to come to all these high school things? Like that would
Uh,
probably be a red flag now looking back.
so it was more than just that. Like it
I
was also the fact that I didn't want to like circle back 2 years and with a
Yeah,
bunch of people in high school that I don't know. Like I don't know these people who are, or whatever, 2 or 3 years, sometimes even more. I mean, there could be like
yeah,
grade 10 kids
yeah.
at parties and stuff. And I just was like, I'm not really interested in that. Like, but yeah, you were super offended by it all because I would say at the time, you didn't understand me at all.
I
You
didn't.
did
No,
not,
it took me a
you didn't
lot of years to
understand.
understand you. Like a lot of years to really get where
Yeah.
you're coming from with this.
So we got through that. And then it was the summertime and you had on your mind that you were going to go to school,
I
which
did.
was which was a very, I would say maybe the most challenging thing of all, just because of the timing of it
Yeah.
and how long we had been together. I mean,
Mm.
so you left and went to UBCO, which is in Kelowna, just 3 hours away from where were living at the time. And that was really challenging because at the time I was also playing on the golf team at school and going to school. And I had like next to zero extra time to spend on
Imagine.
anything other than going to school and work. So you do some little bit of work, traveling with the golf team on weeks or weekends to different places all over the place. So that was quite challenging, I would say. And to be honest, I actually didn't know if we were going to make it beyond that because in my mind, you were signing up for a 4-year thing, and when you had left, had you stayed for the 4 years, I don't think it would have worked because
Yeah.
I was not at the point for my own personal life that I was going to drop things that I wanted to do, such as play on the golf team or a number of things,
Yeah.
primarily play on the golf team. That's what consumed
Yeah.
a large portion of my time.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't going to, every second weekend or something like this, drive to Kelowna and go to see you because we had only been dating for 8 months at this point. It
Yeah.
was not long, you know, and so I didn't actually think, had you choose to stay, I didn't think it was going to pan out, which upset me. To be honest, it did upset me at the time, but I didn't feel like there's anything that I could have done. I didn't want to change your mind on something that you had wanted to do. And it
Yeah.
also kind of made me a little bit like annoyed because I felt like this wasn't something that you were it's not like you were going to be a doctor or you're going to like try to go to law school and this was like some passion you had for a number of years and you
Yeah.
had something out the other end of this that was coming and it was like really important that you went and did this. It was
Yeah.
not like that at all. It was like,
There was literally no dream behind it.
it was like, I want to go to university and I'm going to go to Kelowna. And at the time I was kind of like, wow.
Excited
So
for it.
yeah. So I think I remember you coming home a couple of times.
I feel like I came home a lot. Honestly, though, for me, like that move was actually pretty lonely. Like I realized a lot about myself that just like, it's not, for me, it wasn't just like all fun to just up and leave. Like it actually felt really lonely and talking. And I actually had quite a few friends that were going to school at the same time, like there. And so I felt like, but they weren't like my best friends or people who I could be around. It was just like people who I knew that gave me a little bit of comfort of home. But I really did feel kind of lonely being there. And that was one of the first things where I was like, we talked about this on, I think, the last podcast too, where I was like, I'm going to school for something I actually don't even care about, a
Yeah.
career that at the end of it, I don't really want to get out of it. And I strictly went because I was like, I want to go away to college. I want to move out and go away to college. Like
Yeah.
that was it. That was the only thing that like drove me to move away and go there. And so I lasted 6 weeks there. Like your girl didn't even make it a semester. I
Yeah.
was out of there faster than it was like a very quick little, cute little stint in university. And I came home and I think that we both were happy about that.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember you had come home a few times though. Like in the 6 weeks you did come home, because
I probably came
think
home
I
like
actually
3 or 4
told you
times in 6 weeks.
that time when I was in school then on the golf team was like nuts for me. The start of September till the end of
It's
October,
always
like
the
completely
craziest.
crazy. There's no time for other things. It's like practice, school, classes, get on planes, trains, and automobiles to tournaments, and
Yeah.
come home and like go to workouts. It's just crazy. Like there's nothing. So I think I actually told you, like I'm not gonna come up there. Like I cannot come up there. I don't have a weekend to come up there.
Yeah.
So you ended up coming home a couple of times. I know you came home at least once because you were driving back
Speeding ticket.
through the Coca-Cola and you were 1 kilometer. You're 1 kilometer under getting your car impounded. I think it's 140 kilometers an hour. So you got pulled over and almost
They
got your car
effed
impounded.
me up right before Merritt. If you guys know, you know. You all know exactly what spot I'm talking about because it's the spot. But yeah, no, So I did come home a few times. And I think that was honestly the best thing. I think I was just like, I wasn't making the decision for a actual reason. I just like had it in my mind that I was going away to university and like, everybody was doing it. It was the cool thing to do. And that's what I was going to do. And it was not for me at first because I had no drive behind why I was doing it. I think like you said, like if I'd always planned on like doing this and going because this program was the best to get into this thing that I was so passionate about, then like that would be a completely different story. But that was absolutely not why I was going there. So
it didn't feel like you were advancing your life at all. It just felt like,
no, it
I
would have
want
been
to
a
go and
waste
do
of
this
time.
for no other reason than I want to go and do this. And
yeah, it truly would have been a waste of my time. So like
that was
ended
the first hurdle in the
very
race.
quickly. But it ended very quickly. It didn't last very long.
Yep, it did.
Which was good. And then, so I mean, up until that point, there'd obviously been no real issues because we'd only been together for like 8 months. I go away to school, come back. Everything seems to be okay. We're both still like living with our parents at this point, you guys, because we have to remember we're little babies when we got together. And so you're going to school and then I get a job working at a restaurant, and honestly, it was great. I loved it. And I was taking time to like figure out what I wanted to do. So I was just working full time. Aaron was a student and golfing. And I mean, that too had its.
I think golf caused some other issues throughout the next maybe 3 years.
Yeah, for sure.
At that time, so you and I are very different in this way. And I don't think it necessarily means anything. I just think we're different this way. You were like very needy of me and my time. And I was happy to have like a partner in life. You know, like I didn't need you around every second day. I didn't need to talk to you all day. I didn't need like, it had nothing to do with whether I enjoyed being around you or loved you or anything like that. It's just like I had other stuff going on and we would see each other.
Yeah.
And we would see each other. It wasn't like yeah. So you and I were very different that way.
Yeah.
And at that time, there were parts of my year that were extremely busy. And I think it was very hard for you. Like I said, from September to October was extremely busy with
Uh-huh.
golf and playing every day or trying to play every day and traveling and all these things.
Yeah.
And then I would have sort of a quiet period from November till say March, and
Yeah.
not even, because golf would
Not
start back
even.
up with the golf team. And then golf would get crazy again from March till the end of May. And then the end of May, school would end and I would
But
start
then it'd be, yeah,
playing
all your summer
competitive
tournament.
events that were not even sometimes in the province. So it would be at the golf course a lot. It would be practicing. It would be playing local tournaments. It would be traveling, sometimes across the country or into the United States
Mhm.
or so. And at the time, I don't know that you could have supported that any better than you did, I would say, just with what you needed out of it and probably weren't getting at the time. And I know it bothered you at times because we kind of had some spats about it at various times, but it was another, challenging thing. And I think it's something that, I probably a lot of people who play a competitive sport to some degree have to deal with, or certainly their spouse, whoever that is, would
Mhm.
have to deal with, because it's a
And
very
I would
time
even,
consuming thing.
and I would even say too, now that I've kind of been on the other side of it as well with like working on growing a business, even in the, even in the career space, like if you have a partner or spouse that's like working really hard for something and they know that like the end result of this is good things for you or both of you or whatever, and they like want to work to it, but you know that by doing that, it takes them away from you a little bit or your time is limited. It is a challenge because I never felt like, and this is one of the things that I've always conveyed to him, is I never felt like I didn't want him to be successful. Like I always was like, I'm your biggest cheerleader. But also, can you view this from my point of view? Like it does kind of suck a little bit because I know, and the thing for with the way that you would golf in the tournaments you'd be in is like if you did well in one, it would mean you'd get into another one. Right. And
Yeah.
so then there was always like that double-edged sword where it's like, it's freaking cool to watch you be so good at what you do. But then I'm like, that also means like 3 weeks from now, there's another tournament, which means that for the next 3 weeks, you're going to be spending 7 hours a day at the golf course and like all
Yeah.
of these things, right? And then and weekends and all this. So there was like this back and forth of like, every once in a while, and it was not often because of how much of a rock star you are, but every once in a while he wouldn't make a cut, and I'd be like, okay, now we have like a week off before the next, like, just like there was something about it that just was like, I don't want to be that person because I obviously want to be supportive. And I feel like I was mainly supportive, but there were hard seasons when it was like back to back to back of like months and months and months of that. And like the one that sticks out for me the most, which like we can touch on in a little bit too, but I mean, it all kind of will tie back together, was like the one right after because Aaron went away to school. So I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to touch on like going to school
Yeah.
first and then going, but like Aaron ended up like, so
It's a, it's an interesting, it's an interesting thing because this whole cycle circles back again with
Mhm.
so that was 2011 when Asia decided to go to school and she was away, and
Yeah,
4 years later, so this is January of 2015,
yeah,
I had the chance to go away for school
yeah,
in Las Vegas, which I did. And it's kind of interesting because she had that chance and it was probably the end of things had she done it.
yeah.
But when I did it, it was a very different scenario. And the biggest difference of all was the fact that we had been together for 4 years now. And
And it was
which
like
is,
a life thing. Like we weren't
it's
going
very, yeah,
anywhere.
but
And
it
it
was
was a
very
decision that
different
we made.
than 8 months.
It was a decision we made together too. Like me
Yeah.
going to school was not a decision we made together. It was like, I'm doing this. Like I'm becoming independent, blah, blah, blah. When you chose to go to school in Las Vegas, it was not just like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to leave you behind. It was like, I think this is what is best for the both of us because if we see a future together, like this could lead us down a path that could be really good for us. So it was very
Yeah.
much like a joint thing that we came to together. It wasn't just you
Yeah, for
driving
sure.
bus.
Definitely agree that that was one of the
Uh-huh.
primary differences.
Yeah.
It was like a decision that we had sat down and discussed. And then I think also another really important thing that we had learned from your experience going to school or playing golf or whatever was like we had to try to figure out, okay, if this is the way it's going to be, like what does each person need here? And then we had to try to figure out like, okay, how can we give each person? Because we I think we both understood that if it's going to work, someone can't be just angry for 3 months every semester
Yeah.
while I'm gone, whether
Yeah.
that's you or me. Like it's not going to work if that's the case. And so the first semester, I remember I didn't come home once.
Yeah.
At the time, I was like, why would I come home? It's like January to beginning of May.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to go back home I don't want to pay money to fly home to BC to
Yeah.
be in the pouring rain when it's like I had sun, I had new things I was, getting to experience all the time. I had a wicked golf course that I was able to go to and
Yeah.
play at. Like, I was like, I'm not going home. And
Yeah.
so after that semester, it was not ideal, mostly for
Uh-huh.
you, the way that it went, because I think you had come a couple of times. But
Well,
the moral
also,
of the story was that was not enough. Like over
yeah.
3 months, I think it was twice that you came, and it
But
just wasn't
also
enough.
too, there's an important part to this story is that I was in nursing school. So I had started nursing school already. I was in my third semester of nursing school. Third? First. I was in my first
Uh,
semester at nursing school.
can't remember.
I can't remember. Or
Yeah, it would
second
have
or
been
something
close
like
to.
that. It was
It
very
would have been
close to
close to the beginning.
it was very close to the beginning. So I had just gotten this schedule of like full-time school. And so there wasn't a ton of weekends that I could come anyway. So it was like, reading week. And then there was like one other time that I could come. And then it was just before the end of the semester. I think I came because I came to visit you. And then I went to Hawaii with my girlfriends after that. But it was just before the end of the semester. So I came like 2 or 3 times. It was really challenging because I knew that there was more times that like if I had come and then maybe you had come, like there was more times to kind of rotate it on and off where
Yeah,
I didn't have that. And then for me to always be the one that felt like, okay, I'm always traveling there, it just felt like it was a lot. And
yeah,
so, yeah, that was definitely a challenge. I felt like there was not enough time seeing each other when there could have been
yeah,
way more time.
yeah. So then we'll jump forward a second, then we'll come back. But
Yeah.
in the next fall, so
Yeah.
I had come home over the summer, and in the fall, we had come up with an idea that we would figure out when each person could come, and I ended up going home, I think twice maybe, and then I think you
Yeah.
came. So at the end of it, we worked it out basically once a
Yeah.
month that we would get to
Yeah.
one person would come visit the other one. So again, it was very different than even that collaborative process of. And at this point, we're each of us have our own money. It's not like we're making money to
Yeah.
share with each other where we can just, hey, why don't you come and it's paid for by the both of us. It wasn't like that. It was like you pay to come and visit me.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
paying the money and you're having to travel to go and
Yeah.
visit. And I was like, that's the last thing I want to do is come home, spend my money to come home, travel home when I'm here. And it's
Yeah.
awesome. Like I loved it.
Yeah.
So, but that was one of
Yeah.
it's an ironic thing that you had gone away and it was probably not going to work out. And it was just a
No.
very different scenario. And then next thing you know, 4 years later, the same thing, it's different, but a similar opportunity comes up where I could go to school. And so that semester, the first one, that was 2015 spring. So January to April-ish, May.
Yeah.
And I was there and I had still had eligibility to play in a couple of events with the UFE golf team, which is the school that I had graduated from in the fall. So I graduated in December, but I
Yeah.
still could play just because of the rules that are there. I
Yeah.
still
So
could play.
finish the school year technically. Yeah.
So I still could play in a couple of tournaments. So I hadn't come home all semester. And then I drove with
Which
one of the
already made
assistant
me kind of mad.
coaches.
I'm already mad.
I left school, so packed up my car that I had in Vegas. I drove a car down there, drove my car with my golf clubs and all my other stuff that I had at the time in Vegas. And at the beginning of May, still hadn't been home, drove to Oregon, Bandon Dunes, with one of the assistant coaches of the golf team at the time, because she happened to be in Vegas and we drove together. played in a tournament with the team there, and then I went home. So now it's like usually that tournament's Mother's Day weekend. So I think it's like somewhere around the 12th of May. And I get home, and 2 weeks later, I was going to travel with the team to Ontario to play in our national championship that we have every year. And so that 2 weeks, and I hadn't played golf, like a round of golf. I maybe played like maybe 6 or 7 or 8, maybe 10 times, call it. But none of them are serious round of golf while I was in Vegas. It was just practice or whatever. So I had essentially 2 weeks or 12 days, something like that, to practice until I left. And which again was very hard because I had just gotten home. I'm going to go to the golf course every day for like hours. And get on a plane, travel to Ontario, and I ended up finishing in a spot, 3rd place, so that I made a national team to travel to South Korea in like 1 month from then. And I think this was the ultimate, like, I'm happy for you, but I'm very angry about this. Because now, as she mentioned, this meant like for a month straight, like I mentioned, I hadn't played much. So in my mind, I needed to play a lot to get to the point of playing in like an international competition. So I remember a funny story about this.
It's all flooding back.
It was a bit rocky. Like you were obviously upset about this, and there was nothing that was going to change it. Like you weren't going to.
And I was truly trying not to be upset because I was like, this is so selfish of me to feel this way, but I do really feel this way. But I'm like so proud of you, but also what the F. So
you were obviously angry about it, which I mean, rightfully so. I mean, but it was a situation where it was like, there's no way you're going to talk me out of it. And there's no way you would ever attempt to talk me out of it.
I would never try. No, I wouldn't.
And so I remember going over to, again, the coach at the time was Chris Bertram. And I remember going to Chris and I was telling him about this, sitting in his backyard with him. And I was like, I don't really know what to do, Chris. Like, this is not great. Like, she's clearly quite upset about this. And to my mind, there's nothing I can really do. Like, I don't know what to do about this. And I remember he kind of looked at me with a smile on his face and he's like, sounds like you need to invest in your relationship. And so what that meant was you need to pay money for her to come to South Korea. And so at the time,
thanks, Chris.
I didn't have a whole lot of money, but I'm rational enough to understand that there's not a whole lot of options going on here. And so if you have an option that's, going to solve majority of the problem, it's probably worth taking. So that whole thing turned out to be a lot of fun because you ended up coming with us to South Korea and it turned out to be a lot of fun playing.
It was awesome.
Just being in South Korea with you, and Chris was there with his wife. So we went to a little island there for a few days by ourselves and hung out. And it turned out to be a lot of fun.
Great.
And I never once thought about that money since. So
no, it's paid dividends, hasn't it?
And that, I think, is the last, I'll call, legitimate tournament I've played as like playing golf. So that was 2015. I played in some other little dinky things like local little tournaments, but I don't consider them, an actual tournament. So it's been almost 10 years for me now. So you're probably very excited about that.
Yes and no. Because there's elements, again, I like that you're not like fully in the competitive side of it again, but like there's elements of you being and playing golf that I did enjoy. Like it wasn't all bad. Like I don't want to make it out to be that it was all bad. It was just a lot of your time and commitment. And at the time, I had nothing else going on for me. I think that's another thing. Like, once I started nursing school and then you went away to Las Vegas, it was like this actually, like it worked out. I found I had something going for me that I was doing and I was pursuing outside of just our relationship. And I think that is something that I've learned has just been so healthy for me as well, because I do like to be around people and I do like to have something going on. And for me, when I was just working at the restaurant, like, okay, it filled a social void, but then I would have 12 hours a day where there's nothing going on. And like, if the one person that I want to spend most of my time with is too busy to spend time with me, it kind of sucked. So it was like a challenge to kind of wrap my head around that and get through it. And I think like once I actually was pursuing something, so much of that went away because I was filling it with something else. Is that healthy? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But like, I mean, yeah, I'm going to go with, yeah, it is, because I was pursuing something outside of just our relationship at that point. And if I was able to like do something for me that obviously like helped better both of our lives going forward, but it just gave me something to do. Like you had so much to do all the time. And I truly didn't for a very long time. So when I finally had things to do, it probably took a lot of that off of you too, because you were like, okay, this is actually like a good thing though.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I remember one time, the last piece of golf here, but I remember one time, I can't remember when it was, like what time period it was, but I remember I was at the golf course and you were texting me and like you were clearly very unhappy. And it must have been a little bit earlier on because you were like very angry at the time and you're like, I want to talk with you like right now kind of thing. And I'm like, well, I'm at the golf course practicing. Like, and I remember going over to your house. I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's going to break up with me right now. And you didn't. And I think it's like I think it's a good summary of our, at that time. I think the fact that you just kept sticking by me, even though my life was very geared towards Aaron at the time, was like, it showed me that like you're legitimately serious about this. And like, I am someone who runs off of loyalty. So you were very loyal to me at that time, even though a large portion of what I was doing was like, had nothing to do with you. Like you were not involved necessarily in it at all. It was just me and what I wanted to do. And so I still remember that one because I remember feeling like, okay, she's obviously pretty loyal to me if like she's this angry and she's not gonna just say like, screw it, I'm out of here. So that 2015 was the end of the golfing period, with you and I, and the kind of stress that it put between you and I. And then I graduated in 2016. So this was the fall of 2016 in December. And I was home. I think I flew home. I did fly home some point early in the semester. So it must have been like September, October, because we were looking at a house. So we were figuring out, okay, we'd like to buy a house. And I remember you had kind of went searching around Chilliwack, looking on realtor.ca and blah, blah, blah. And you found a house and
You
it
know
was
how
an
I found it
absolute
though? I
dumpster
found it
dive.
because I was driving to your parents' house because when Aaron was away at school, I used to go over to his parents' house anyway, and I played cards with his mom. And I drove past it on the way to your parents' house. And I remember looking at it and being like, that is a piece of shit that we might be able to buy. And I remember looking at it and being like, I'm going to find this. And I wrote down the realtors' names and everything. I'm like, I'm going to find this on the internet. And I found it. And then I was weird because we were trying to figure out, like, I was at this point where Aaron was about to come back from school and we were like, okay, do we rent a little bit? And so I started looking at like rental properties with my mom. And at the time, like rentals were insane. Like they would have like open houses. They would have open houses for rentals because there were so short rentals. So people just like have an open house for a rental property and you would walk through it and you would like make a bid on your rental property. And I was walking through like 500 square foot basement suites and just all these things for like $800, $900, $1,000 a month. There was one that I liked that was like 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It was like $1,100 a month. Granted, we're both like broke college students. He's just graduating with a master's, has no money. Like, I was just like, I don't want to pay this much money for these basement suites that are just crap. Like, I don't want to live in this. But so then we were like, okay, but maybe we could like buy a townhouse or something small or whatever. And then we drove past this POS house and you came home and we set up a time to look at it. And it really was a labor of love, that bad boy.
But I had thought of buying a house and I tried to convince a couple of other people. Like one of my friends I tried to convince pretty hard to buy a house with me earlier before. Like this was probably 3-4 years before, and this was in Chilliwack, and nobody would take me up on it. So And at the time, I didn't have much money, so I was trying to find somebody with money and then kind of work a deal with them to figure out how we could
Yeah.
do this. But I'd always been geared towards like, I don't really care if it's a piece of junk. Like, what I care about is A, having my own place, and B, I care about, if you could make it a little bit better, maybe you could make a few bucks off of it. So
Yeah.
we ended up scraping together $9,000 for a down
Each
payment because we were,
per person.
yes,
So
per person.
18 total.
Yeah. Because we needed 5% with
Yeah.
the
It was
first
a
time home buyer.
$360,000 house that we bought.
And then we had to get two people to co-sign for the mortgage because neither of us had jobs.
Did
so
we have three?
We couldn't.
We had three
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's numerous co-signers. So anyways, because the co-signers had mortgages themselves. So anyways, we had to scrape together this money, scrape together people who would put their name down for us to have a mortgage that we would actually pay it, even though we had no jobs at the time. I think you were just working at Cactus, but like 70% of what you make is as tips. So it's not like you're reporting making 50 grand a year. You're reporting making like 19.
No, guys, no. My T4 was $7,400 the year that we tried to get a house. $7,400 because all my money
get you a mortgage.
Came in tips. They were probably like, these poor co-signers, they're gonna take over this house.
So then we ended up buying that house while I was away. I think in November we had it all signed up.
Yeah,
everything was a done deal. I was still in Vegas at the time.
Yeah.
And then in December, I drove home, and I think it was right in the beginning of January, we moved into that house. We had no money to put the heating on. We couldn't put the heater on because we didn't have any money. We ended up getting some jobs, and at the time I was working at a golf course, and so we had like one actual ish, I'll call it ish income, and we ended up signing for our own mortgage, within a year. And so that was the 2017, which was interesting.
We would literally turn our oven on to heat our house because we were so poor we couldn't turn on the baseboard heater.
I heard that from one of my friends, and I was like, "You're a genius."
Yeah, 550, crank it up to 550, let it preheat, turn it off, open it up.
You don't need to heat the whole house. You just got to heat the kitchen where you're standing making food. So then that was an interesting experience too, because like living with somebody is very different than dating somebody or seeing somebody regularly. Like when you're around them, when they get out of bed or when they're getting ready in the morning, or the quirky
I don't know what you're talking about.
The quirky things. There's every person does quirky things to other people, and they do things their way when they live life in their own house. It takes a minute to get used to that, and it can like, I don't think it was too much of an issue for you and I, but I remember it being like a little bit challenging, just trying to figure out like, how is this going to operate?
Yeah.
There's numerous things each of us are like, can you just not do that anymore? Like, why are you even doing that? Whatever it is, like, could you make the bed? And you're like, I'm like, no, why would I waste my time making the bed when I'm going to dirty it again later today? Like, why would I do that? Or
I
whatever.
Totally let that one go.
Cleaning the dishes, like, I'm not going to clean the dishes after dinner. I'm going to do it the next time I'm in the kitchen. First thing in the morning, I'll have the kitchen right clean. Yeah. Whereas you want to clean it as soon as dinner is done, and it be clean so that you can put your head on the pillow and know the kitchen's clean for whatever reason. Yeah. But so there's just lots of things that it just takes time to figure each other out. And we had been together for 6 years, so it's not like we had figured each other out in certain ways. Yeah, but when you live together with somebody, you have to figure them out again and figure out these new things that are being sort of chucked at you every day, and why they do things the way they do, or how they do things the way they do. But that was our, trying to figure out how to not be poor anymore phase of, okay, we have some degrees and stuff. We should probably get a job, and we have a mortgage to pay, and we got to pay for our own food now. And so
that was another thing too, like the food as well. That was another thing too, because I remember we ate a lot of just like fast and processed things because they were cheaper. And like we stopped, there were certain things I remember you're like, you can't buy peppers anymore because peppers are too expensive.
Yeah, they're like
I remember you telling me that.
$3 each, and you'd not full
Yeah.
from any of it. So
Yeah.
that's just like
He's like, we
dumping
need
money in the
food that's
toilet.
gonna like keep us full. Because it was like we literally had no money. But I think learning to live like that, because that was like, we never had to live like that because we both had been kind of like living with our parents, or like at least for me, like I'd been living with my parents. I also was a major overspender. Like that's a whole other issue. Like if I made money, I spent money. And so like I really having to go through that, it taught me so many things about like what I'm capable of, but also it has made me really grateful for like the things that I'm able to do now. Like I actually remember being told not to buy peppers. And that story sometimes comes through my mind when I'm buying peppers, being like, I've made it. Like I can buy these now and not have to like check my bank account because it's like you've gone through those things, having to turn the oven on to heat your house. Like you've gone through that. I remember never inviting people over. People would be like, I want to come see your house. I'm like, you're not coming. Like our house had bars on the windows when we bought it, you guys. I found a crack pipe in my bathroom when we bought it. Like I did not invite people over to this house because I was like, you don't want to be here. Like it's cold. You have to bring your own jacket and toque to like sit in my living room. Like you're not coming over.
Yeah.
So just to like go through that together and come out of it on the other side and learn so many things about ourselves and like what we're willing to do to make it work. I mean, that house was like something I will remember for the rest of my life because there's been so many things that we've done to it and put into it. And I mean, we don't own it anymore. We did sell it. But yeah, it just like, it's a part of our journey together that like I will always remember because there was so much growth that went on in that season of life for sure. And then it was also so nice too to be able to come out on the other side and like you finished your master's, I finished my nursing degree. We both got real jobs with like real money. And we were like, oh, this is like what everybody talks about. Like when you're not just like scrumming together cents to try and put food on the table. Like I got it now.
Yeah, but I think it's important. Like I think
Me
you
too.
have to go
So do
through that
I.
stuff. Like you have to go through that stuff so that you actually like value things you have later on. Like I don't
Yeah.
think if you don't go through that and you don't like have nothing and have to fight for it, I just don't think that you value it the same. Like as somebody who really had to struggle and then they don't have to struggle after a number of years of working hard or doing something that was very difficult and now they don't struggle from it. I think they really appreciate it. And I know now if I had to turn the heat off and wear a jacket around, I'd be like, this would be very uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
at the time, I personally didn't really care. I was like, I'm not going to jack up the heating bill to $300 a month instead of $100. This is not worth the $200 to me because at the time, $200 was like, I don't want to go and work those hours to try and make the $200. I'd rather just keep the heater off and wear the jacket that I have. Like,
Yeah. For real.
I think another big thing from the house, and this could kind of go back in, the last podcast, but another big thing from the house was we ended up selling it in 2021. If anyone knows anything about the real estate market in Canada or Fraser Valley specifically, you would have known that everything went through the roof at the time. And it's a bit of an anomaly, but I remember when we sold it and we could kind of see the price of it appreciating quite rapidly
We looked
before
into
that.
selling it
Like,
a few times
yeah,
over
we
the
looked into
years.
selling it a few times, but when we sold it, we had made a whole whack of money on it. And I remember both of us going, we had done some stuff to that house. We put in some money, but it wasn't nothing compared to when we add up the amount of time we had spent going to our jobs, and that was taxable income. So you're paying whatever you want, 20 to 30%, something like that on every dollar you make. It's 20 to 30%. And you're actually going in and exerting effort and being somewhere at a location, doing all this stuff. And I remember when we got a massive check from our house selling, at the time, it was massive to me.
Yeah.
I was like, hold on a sec. And it was tax-free because it's our primary residence. I was like, hold on a second. Like something doesn't add up here. And I remember this would be the first time it was like, hey, maybe this is something, is going on here? Like maybe, you know, maybe we got to think about buying more homes or doing something other than just
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to
How to
earn
work
money our
to
way through
make a
life,
dollar. Yeah.
So that was a little later on when we had sold the house, but we were in the house, and a couple of years later, we had our first kid, Baker.
Uh-huh.
So that was 2019, and he came back to that house. So
Yeah.
that was quite exciting, and again, a whole new thing. I didn't really think there was many challenges to it, like between you and I in our
No.
relationship. I didn't think it put stress on us in either way, because like I said, like both of us had said, there's been a number of things prior to that that actually stressed us to the point of like, is this going to work? Like, are you guys going to
Yeah.
figure this out, or is this just like going to fizzle away?
Yeah.
And so adding a kid in at that time didn't seem like, a fraction of the challenge of,
No.
going away to school for 2 years and figuring out how to long distance for 1 month at a time, or, early on when you went to school, or figuring out, the whole golfing thing and between
Yeah.
you and I, like those things seem way bigger than
Yeah.
bringing home a kid and just figuring out who's going to change a diaper.
Yeah.
And we were both very, like, okay, if this needs done, then I'll do it. And if
Yeah.
I can't do it, then you'll do it. And we were
Yeah.
both happy to operate that way. Like
Yeah.
there was never like, I'm not doing that. Like, there was
Yeah.
never, it
No.
was never like that.
It was very much like, it was very much teamwork. It was very much like, this is both of our child. It wasn't like, you're responsible for this. And honestly, I remember having conversations with you too, where, because I chose and was able to like breastfeed Baker. And so I remember having conversations with you where you're like, well, I feel like there's things that I need to be doing, because there's the one main thing that often soothes him and makes him happy or makes him fall asleep or whatever that I can't do. Like that is something you need to do. So you were super hands-on with stuff too, which like, I mean, shouldn't be as a surprise to me, but something that I feel like not everybody is like that. So, I mean, it was just very much teamwork. It was like everything was split as evenly as it could be, or like slack was picked up if the other person couldn't or whatever. Like, I don't feel like it was a really high tension time for us either. Like, I would definitely agree with
And I think that I know this actually, that same concept of, teamwork, or if one person can do it, or it makes more sense for one person to do it than the other, has kind of shifted, or it was a part of how we made money at the time.
Yeah.
If you could, for example, if you could go to Cactus Club and make $50 an hour with tips and all that stuff, and I could do something and it made me 25, we would have both done them. But if it meant, okay, one person has time, if we had a kid or something, the person who's going to make the more money, it would have gone and done it. And
Yeah.
that went through, you were still in school at a time in the house, and I was the only one working for the most part. You would do some shifts at Cactus Club, but I was the
Very
one
rarely. Yeah.
going to work, and it kind of has flip-flopped numerous times
Yeah.
over the past 7 years. But that's something that we have, like, I don't think there's any disagreement on that ever. It's like, okay, it makes more sense for you to do it, then would you go and do that, and I'll do whatever needs done or needed done. Whether I want to do it or not, it doesn't matter. It's just that's what needs done, because you're going through this, or so just that's what needs done. And so that's it's kind of another
It's
thing
never
that
been with us. It's never been this like you have a role and I have a role and we stick to our roles all the time. It's never really been like that. It's always been like, I mean, obviously we sit down, and especially now, and we think about like future, what do we want our future to look like? What do we want our lives to look like? Who in what capacity has the possibility of making that happen more? Sometimes it's the both of us. Like sometimes both of us are working. Sometimes it's just one person and the other person's helping out in this area. And that does shift a lot. It's not like, it hasn't been like you've always worked full time and I've always been home with kids, or like, or vice versa, or like I've worked full time and you've been home with kids. Like we've had different things go on so much in our relationship over the last like 8 years or 9, 10 years of being like employed people, right?
Well,
There's
it's
been so
still,
many different hats that have been worn by both of us because it's not meant to just be like one solid role. We've always kind
it's,
of just met the needs of the goal that we're going for at that point.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like, what's the goal? And then who's
Yeah.
going to do what's the
What's required to meet
heaviest
that
lifting
goal
thing?
and what is
Yeah.
your role to get that goal? Yeah.
But it still even happens now. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
when I was working on the house, you basically had to assume everything at our actual place of residence, like with the
Yeah.
kids and everything. And I was doing that,
Yeah.
trying to work on that and build that so that we could get in there and move in there and live in there.
Mhm.
And then, it shifted to times where, you need time to work your business and I'm not
Yeah.
doing as much, you know, my time commitments to things aren't as great. And so then I pick up what's going on at the house and I do stuff with the boys or whatever, so
Yeah.
that you can go out and do, you're going to be more productive for our
Yeah.
future. So you go out and do that. And,
Yeah.
then I pick up the back end of things with figuring out with the boys, pick them up from the preschool stuff or daycare or whatever.
Yeah.
And we go to the swimming pool, like we just go and do stuff and
Yeah.
cook dinners, clean the house, clean kitchen, do laundry, like all those things. So it's
Yeah.
very much like we think about it from who is going to be the most effective for our future going forward.
Mhm.
And they go and do that at the time. And the other person picks up the back end things. But I
Yeah.
mean, that'll change as you have more money to expend on things, or as the kids get
Yeah.
older and they don't need that anymore. But yeah, that's definitely the way it's gone for certainly the last probably 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like it actually works fairly well. There's obviously challenges that can come from that. Like one person can get burnt out from what they're doing and vice versa. Like,
Yeah.
but I think it really is just that's the focus right now. And we're just like, whatever it takes to meet that is what is required. Like, there's no we don't really question it. We'll make adjustments if we're like, okay, this isn't working. Like, when we hired a nanny, we were kind of like, I'm now drowning. So how do we help that problem in order to keep you doing what you're doing? Right. So there's that too. So, I mean, yeah, we're always willing, like nothing is ever set in stone. And this is where like the roles kind of come into play that I talked about. Like we don't really have those. They're ever changing because
Yeah,
it's
true.
whatever is going to be best for the outcome, the desired outcome that we're kind of going for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at now. But I think, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the evolution of us. And then we had Baker, we sold a house, we made a little bit of money. Now we've started some investments because our mindset around that has shifted a little. And we had Luca.
Oh, we had Luca in there too.
We had Luca.
You're
Yeah.
thinking about Luca.
Yeah. I'm
So
not gonna, I would never forget it.
Luca was mixed into the fold in 2021.
Yeah. And that's when we were living in our 2-bedroom condo. So it's a bit of a tight squeeze for all of us.
That was a bit of a challenge too, that one.
That condo was a bit of a challenge. I wouldn't say that it was too bad in the beginning, like when Luca first came.
No.
Because he couldn't move around. I think once he became like 8-9 months and was like moving around and getting into stuff, it started to feel really tight. But having a second child was really hard on me, actually, emotionally, way more so than I anticipated. And I don't even know, like, I don't know if I've really asked you this, but did you notice that it was really hard on me? Like, I think like I look back now in hindsight and go, I don't think I was really like the best version of myself when Luca was first born. And I don't want to necessarily like classify it as anything, like say that it was like postpartum depression or whatever. But I definitely know that I struggled with bonding with him for quite some time. And it was really challenging for me, mostly because he just didn't sleep. And I felt so angry about it of the time. But like I
only knew
I found
you
having
asked
one
me a
baby
question.
was really easy. So when I had a second one, it really was hard. So I don't know. Do you find like that it was harder on me the second time around than the first? Like, do you remember that?
I don't remember too much other than I remember you just telling me all the time. Like you told me a lot that it just was very different than when you had Baker and you didn't feel like you connected with Luca very well. And I think part of that has to be the fact that we had a 2-year-old in the house and a newborn kid.
Yeah.
And I honestly thought at the time too, I'm like, I love Baker. I had so much fun with Baker, and he was awesome at the time. He's still awesome, but it's just a 2-year-old, and
2-year-olds are so fun.
all they want to do is
Yeah.
do laughing and fun stuff.
Yeah.
And they get riled up every once in a while. And I remember thinking at the time, just like, I don't know how I could like this other kid, Luca, as much as I like Baker. I'm like, this kid is so cool. He does all these fun stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't feel the same now because I know Luca the same way that I know Baker. So it's like
Yeah.
a lot of it was just that. So I think,
Yeah.
I don't know this, but to some degree, I think that's something that had to have played in there. You don't know a newborn at all. You can't talk to them. You can't laugh with them. You can't engage with them in any way. You just basically fill their needs. And outside of that, they give you nothing in return
Yeah.
until they're able to like walk and
Yeah.
speak some words and actually laugh or smile, and you can interact with them. So I think some of it had to do with that, but I don't remember much about it. Like, I don't remember any specific examples where I'm like, oh, wow, she looks like she's struggling with Luca or anything like that. I just remember you know, like telling me frequently what you were sort of experiencing about it.
Yeah.
And again, there's nothing I could really do to help at that time because an infant
No.
is like 99% dependent on mom. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think I would just do stuff with Baker. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I don't really remember, like, I remember kind of not being super happy in that. I shouldn't say happy, because that's not true either. Like, there's elements of it that I did really enjoy, but I just remember looking back being like, oh, it really didn't feel the same as when Baker was first born. Like, I remember being so infatuated with Baker and obsessed with him to the point where, like, I never wanted to put him down. I was totally fine to have a nap on me all day long. And I remember feeling more like Luca was an inconvenience at times, which like is so unfair to say. But
well, he's just literally, you know, you're servicing his like basic needs as a human, and that's it. That's what I was saying. Like,
I know,
there's
but
no,
like I had to do that with Baker the first time around too, and I didn't feel that way. So I don't know if it's because I also had another child who's like, I can't get to you right now. Like, there's a 2-year-old trying to jump off the kitchen island. Like, you know, like maybe there is moments like that. I'm not really sure exactly what it was, but I do remember that it just didn't feel the same as it did with Luca. And that was a challenge for me, probably up until he was close to 1 year old. And then again, like, you get their personality and you start to see who they are a little bit. And then I think that really shifted for me. And I don't know if it did for you too. Like, I'm sure it did. And I know even for you, like with Baker as well, like I remember you saying like, oh, I can't wait till he's like 6 months old, and then be like, oh, I can't wait till he's like a year. And then you get to that point where like, no, I love this. Like, I want to freeze time. And I kind of feel like that even right now with our kids, or even like a year ago with our kids, of like that 4 and 3 kind of age. Like, it is so fun and you just want to freeze time. And like, obviously I'm so grateful that those feelings with Luca totally dissipated, because he's like the funniest, most spicy child ever in the world. And so it's like, he's so great. Like, I love him so much. He's so freaking cute. But yeah, I do remember like having him, and for the first year, it was really, really hard for me, at least. But we made it through, and here we are. And obviously we've come out on the other side. And yeah, I mean, we both have kind of gone through the transition of like having careers, going through different things, and going, you know, while growing our family, kind of testing the waters with some more like entrepreneurial side of things. And now obviously, like, I was working as a nurse when we had first, you know, I was still in school when we had gotten married. Guess we kind of skipped over that. We did get married in 2017.
yeah, that's
as well.
true.
So we got married in 2017 before Baker came a couple of years later. But like, you know, I'd been working as a nurse, and then now I don't do that anymore at all. Like, I work full time for my own business that I run through a network marketing company. So we've had so many shifts that have come along the way over the last 14 years of our relationship.
I think the last thing before we wrap this up,
Yeah.
I think I remember at the time when we first had our kids, they were still very young. I do remember like just kind of rolling this back to like our relationship piece and all this. I remember it being pretty difficult for you and I, because prior to having Baker, or even early on in Baker, I mean, you could go and do stuff together, no problem. Somebody could
Yeah.
watch Baker for an hour while we go have dinner or whatever. Like we could
Mhm.
go do anything. Somebody could watch
Yeah.
him for an hour. It's no problem. They don't move. He just lays in
Yeah.
a little sleeper or whatever. It
Yeah.
was really easy.
Yeah.
And as it sort of progressed to having a 2-year-old and a, you know,
Newborn.
3-year-old and a 1 year
Yeah.
old or a newborn, like it became much more difficult to go and do anything like between the two of us.
Yeah.
And it was something, I almost felt like something that you just had to accept. Like
Yeah.
for me, and I'm not saying I'm like the person who wants to go and do this stuff all the time either. Like it's okay if I don't.
Yeah. We
Like I
don't abuse it
recognize,
by any means, but every now and then it's nice.
but I just recognize that like this is a part of our life now. Like we chose to have kids. They
Yeah.
need a ton of attention and care and time, and maybe you don't have time for, doing things between yourself very often anymore. But I think one of the things that's come of it is that we really enjoy doing stuff with our kids. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we like to go and do something every once in a while by ourselves, but oftentimes when we go and do that, I think you'll agree, we end up sitting there going like, oh, it would be fun if the kids were here. Like, outside of say the odd dinner, it's
Yeah.
nice to go and sit down by ourselves every once in a while and
Not
have
be
dinner
interrupted.
or lunch or whatever and just go and
Yeah.
sit and talk for an hour.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's very frequent that we actually choose to go and do something and don't bring up our kids.
The kids ever. No.
Yeah. So I think that's it for today.
Well, we have
Another thing we said last week was just, if you want, we'd like to do a Q&A. So if other people have questions at some point, we're going to do a Q&A. So if you have questions, just drop them. We have an Instagram channel. Drop them on the Instagram channel in a message, or if you're watching it on YouTube, just leave the comment somewhere in the box below. But we'd like to do that. So at some point when we have enough questions, we'll do that. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Bye.